Today, we're going to talk about China's youth unemployment crisis. It is, without a doubt, one of the biggest headaches for Beijing right now. But to really understand why this is such a ticking time bomb, we've got to go back in time. Because the real story here, the roots of this whole mess, are probably not what you think.
Okay, so if you take a snapshot of China's economy today, it's not a pretty picture. I mean, pretty much every indicator is pointing down. GDP growth, down. Foreign investment, way down. Consumer confidence, the housing market, you name it, it's struggling. It's like looking at the dashboard of a car and every single warning light is flashing red.
But here's the thing. Among all those blinking lights, all that economic noise, there is one single data point that truly, deeply terrifies the Chinese Communist Party. And it starts with this number, 21%. That was the official youth unemployment rate right before the government decided, maybe it was better to just stop publishing the data altogether. And again, that's the number they wanted us to see. The reality? Well, it's probably much, much worse. One professor at a top university in China did the math, and he figures if you include all the young people who've just plain given up on finding a job, the real number is closer to 46%. We're talking about over 30 million educated, ambitious, young people with nowhere to go.
So that's the big question, right? Why is this number, this specific problem, so much scarier to the party than a housing bubble or a stock market crash? Well, the answer, believe it or not, is buried deep in the party's own history.
To really get it, we have to go back to the spring of 1989. Back to Tiananmen Square, an event that, even today, casts a long, long shadow over every single thing the Communist Party does. Now, when we think of Tiananmen, we usually think of it as a pro-democracy movement. And it was. But what really lit the fuse were boring, everyday economic problems. Inflation, corruption, and, a lack of good jobs. The big takeaway for the party was crystal clear. An unhappy, unemployed youth population isn't just an economic problem, it's an existential threat. And that fear, it's why Beijing now spends more money on internal security than on its entire military. And it didn't take long for that lesson to be put to the test. A few years later, during the Asian financial crisis, China faced another potential catastrophe with youth unemployment. And what they came up with was, frankly, a stroke of genius. The late 90s were absolutely brutal. Just look at these numbers. In 97, 6 million state workers were laid off. The next year, 7 million more. And the year after that, another 8 million. For a whole generation of young people about to enter the workforce, it was like hitting a solid brick wall. And this quote right here just nails the danger, doesn't it? That moment you leave school, it's a fork in the road. You either buy into the system or you turn against it. With millions of young people facing a dead end, the party could see the ghost of 1989, and they knew they had to do something fast. So what was their radical solution? Well, they couldn't let all these restless young people flood the streets. So they came up with a bribe. And in a culture that is absolutely obsessed with education, what's the ultimate bribe? A place at a university. And the scale of this was just insane. Look at this chart. In the very first year, they jacked up enrollment by almost 60%. Fast forward to 2013, and it had ballooned by an incredible 1,600%. This was a policy born out of pure desperation, but you know what? It worked like a charm. But here's the really clever part. This wasn't some free handout. They opened the doors, sure, but they also made it super competitive. They started charging tuition for the first time. And, this is key, they stopped guaranteeing jobs after graduation. Suddenly, success or failure wasn't the state's problem. It was your problem. It was a brilliant move that turned what could have been collective anger into individual ambition and anxiety.
And for decades, this system worked perfectly. It was a masterclass in social engineering. But the whole thing, the entire structure, was balanced on one single critical ingredient. And today, that ingredient is gone.
So what was the secret sauce? What made this whole thing work? It was China's ridiculously fast, mind-blowing economic growth. The bribe only worked because after 4 years of a brutal rat race, there was a real prize waiting at the end. A good, white-collar job. I mean, just look at the difference between then and now. Back in the early 2000s, the economy was booming so fast it was creating more than enough jobs for all these new graduates. But now, the economy's slowing down,
But for political reasons, they kept pumping out more and more graduates. The result is a total mismatch. Way more educated young people than there are jobs for them.
Somebody described this as being like a rubber band. You can stretch it, and for a while, that tension makes people try harder, compete more. But if you stretch it too far, when it feels like no matter how hard you try, you can't win, that rubber band doesn't just stretch anymore, it snaps.
And if you look around China today, you can see the signs of that band snapping everywhere. You've got lottery ticket sales going through the roof. You have something like 16 million young people who've just given up. They're called professional children. You even see it in the language, with all this new slang about being hopeless and alienated.
And this is where we get to the heart of why this crisis is so much more dangerous than the last one. It's not just about the unemployment numbers. It's about a massive psychological shift in how young people see the world and their place in it.
This survey data tells you everything you need to know. Back during the boom years, if you asked people why someone was poor, they'd say it was their own fault. They didn't work hard enough. Ask that same question today, and the answer is completely different. The system is unfair.
This creates what you could call a generational fault line. Think about it. Today's graduates grew up watching their parents succeed in this incredible economic boom. They were the haves. So their kids' expectations were set sky high. But now, those kids are entering a completely different world. They feel like the have-nots. And this quote just hits it perfectly. It's this deep feeling that the train of opportunity has already left the station, and this entire generation was left standing on the platform. So you end up with this really dangerous combination, this perfect storm. You've got the most educated generation in Chinese history, filled with high expectations. But they also have this profound sense of being cheated, of feeling poorer than their parents. They're all packed into cities where it's easy for discontent to spread. And they know the system inside and out, the very system they now believe has failed them. So it all comes back to this. The party's incredibly clever solution to its last big crisis has become the seed of its greatest problem today. That old trick, the university bribe, it's not going to work a second time. So the big, unsettling question is, what on earth comes next?